Welcome back, fight fans, to another episode of Bourbon and Boxing. I am your host, Jeff, where we're going to drink some bourbon and we're going to talk some boxing, man. That's what we do on this show. That's what we love to do. I'm going to call this episode Moving On Up, kind of like the Jeffersons. As you can see, I've got a new camera, I've got new equipment, a new microphone, boomstick, all that fun stuff to try to make the quality and the sound of the show a lot better. We even got some fans on the show cheering us on as we go. Nice to hear that. Nice to hear that, man. And they all think I'm pretty awesome. Did you hear that?
Awesome!
See, yeah, there we go, man. They think I'm awesome. But like I said, we drink bourbon and we talk boxing on this show. Today, I am showcasing what I always showcase what I drink. Here we have this is Bullet Barrel Strength. It's really good stuff. It's really strong. Like it. Not so smooth. It is rough, but man, it'll get the job done if you want. I'm not going to drink a lot of bourbon tonight. Kind of did my fair share drinking the other night. So I have a few shots with you, man. But that'd be about the extent. Of course, we're always going to start the show off with a shot. Uh, Otherwise, it just wouldn't be bourbon and boxing without bourbon. You know, it just wouldn't be right to have bourbon and boxing and no bourbon, man. Then we're going to talk about the fights last week. Of course, some good fights last week, female fights, Frank Martin fight, all that fun stuff. And then I'm going to mix in uh, basically Saturday's fight, Tuesday's fight, and Friday's fight next week as our fights for this week because the Terrence Crawford fight being as big as it is, we want to kind of focus on those other fights, give them their time because the Inoue Fulton fight is a huge fight. This weekend, we don't have a lot of big fights. You got the Kambosa and Max Hughes fight going on Saturday for the IBO lightweight title. So you'll have that fight, but to me, that's not a huge fight. I'll tune into it, no doubt, but it's not going to be the fight of the week for me. Oh, man, I ate a lot of food this week, man. I ate a lot of food earlier today. I actually took a nap before I decided to do the show. So I might be lagging a little bit, but hey, let's get this shot out of the way, man. Like I said, tonight I am drinking on Bullet Bourbon. That's the drink of choice. Bullet Bourbon. Give it a shot. It's really good stuff. Not bad. I'm a fan of it. Uh, It's not smooth going down, but I got a chaser with me, so we'll be good. All right, let's get this shot out of the way so we can get to talking what we love most, and that's boxing. Woo! Man. Yeah. That shit right there is strong. Definitely strong. If I'm correct, it is 60%. Yep. Yeah, 60.1%. Some strong stuff, man. I want to get into last week's fights. Mainly, the fight I want to talk about the most would be the Frank Martin fight. I'm not going to pretend on how to pronounce the guy he was fighting's name, Jimenez. So we'll go with that. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't Jimenez, but it was like Jimenez or some shit like that. But what I want to get to in that fight was Frank looked really impressive, and he was catching a lot of slack. People said, I even read on the internet where people said he lost that fight. And come on, people. For one, I want to talk about the Showtime card holder. Can't remember this guy's name, but he's a moron. He's an absolute moron, man. He had going into the 10th round. He had Frank Martin down 7-2, 7-2. People, 7-2. Frank hurt this guy in the 6th round. He outboxed him every single round. There wasn't a round that I could have said that Frank lost. His foot movement was great. The only thing that I saw that Frank could have did better was when he was pivoting around him. He could have thrown those punches a little bit faster as he was going around because the guy was not expecting a lot of that foot movement Frank was doing, and it looked like Frank kind of had him open every time he would pivot around him. had an open ability to go for the body, and he was going for the head. But Frank Martin controlled that whole fight, man. He fought an excellent fight. The only thing his opponent had was a looping right hand, and Frank figured that out early. Said, just watch that looping right, and he controlled the whole fight. But going into the fight, like I said, the 10th round, the Showtime scorecard comes up, and I see that they got Martin down literally 7-2. And I'm like, what? Like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing right now? And then to hear the Showtime announcers pretty much try to justify what their scorecard, what that guy's scorecard was reading, saying that his opponent was a more active guy. Wrong. Frank was more active. Look at the CompuBox numbers. Look at Frank's punch numbers. He threw, if I'm correct, 100 more punches. In the end, his punch landing percentage was higher. He just outthrew the guy. He outboxed the guy. And you had people saying he lost the fight. And I don't know. See, and that's the thing about boxing, man. There's always some kind of underlining. Some snake in the grass with some kind of ulterior motive. And I feel like they wanted Martin to lose that fight. They were trying to convince the people watching it that Martin was losing this fight. And he wasn't by any means. Anybody who watched that fight, if you can tell me Martin lost that fight, I'm going to tell you to stop watching boxing. Go back and watch it again. Not one aspect of that fight did Martin not control. He controlled the whole fight from round 1 all the way to round 12. Now, he started out slow, figuring the guy out, figuring out how to get around that looping right, and that's pretty much all his opponent had. He got to the 6th round. He turned it on, hurt the guy a couple times in the 6th round, wasn't able to finish him there, and then continued from the 6th round on all the way to the 12th, just kind of turning it on, putting the heat on the guy, hurt him a couple more times, I want to say, in the 8th round and in the 10th round. So 3 different times he had this guy stunned. And then in the 12th round, he knocks him down. So thank God the judges on hand watched the same fight that I watched and had it a unanimous decision in favor of Martin. Because there's no way, I don't know what, and how the announcers were trying to justify the scorecard that Showtime had. Literally had Martin down 7-2. So pretty much would have said no matter what he did going into the 10th round, 10th, 11th, and 12th round, all 3 of those rounds that he absolutely dominated anyways. They were pretty much saying that he could go in and win all 3 of those rounds and he would have still lost that fight 7-5. I'm having a hard time. Like, I blew my shit. I really did. I blew my shit. I was down here. I was young. When I saw that scorecard, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, trying to figure out what the hell is this guy watching? And then I really blew my shit when the Showtime announcers tried to justify the scorecard and tried to make reasons why he might have him down 7-2, why he might think Frank Martin is losing this fight. And then they're trying to justify, well, you know, Jimenez is a busier fighter. He's definitely more active in the ring. Wrong. Now you're just pulling shit out of your ass, man. And it makes it hard for me to really take anything Showtime says serious after seeing that. Now, I mean, is there a rule on Showtime that says whatever the scorecard says, whatever our scorecard says, you guys have to go with it? You can't argue against our scorecard. Because one of those announcers absolutely should have called that guy out. One of them should have said, man, are you out your mind? What are you watching? This guy he's wrong. He was just dead wrong on his scorecard. And I thought to myself, like, man, like, just, they were trying to rob Frank Martin. I really believe deep down in my heart, even after seeing a thing by ESPN saying that Jimenez wants a rematch and he wants Terrence Crawford and he wants Ariel Spence, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here. I know it wasn't Crawford and Spence, but he was saying he wanted Tank Davis and Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney. And shut the fuck up. That guy He can't go 12 rounds for one. He starts to lose gas after 6 or 7 rounds. We saw that in the last 2 fights that he had. Number two, Frank just walked all over this dude. And here we are, the media and promoters and shit trying to pump up this guy as if he went in there and he did something special against Frank, and he absolutely didn't. He got outboxed. He got beat the whole fight. He got hurt 3 times. He got knocked down 1 time. But you're going to tell me that guy won the fight? Like, if I'm looking in that ring, and at the end of that fight, I look at 2 fighters. Teddy Atlas always says this. You look at the 2 guys in the ring. Who would you want to be? When the fight's all over, what guy do you want to be? I would have wanted to be Frank Martin. Whatever his opponent's name. I cannot get his name. I'm not going to keep saying. I probably keep butchering this guy's name. But he looked like he took an ass whooping. And that's a fact. At the end of that fight, I would have wanted to be Frank Martin. Kind of disappointed that Teddy didn't talk about it this week either. And that no boxing outlet has really picked up on it. I didn't listen to Chris Mannix this week like I usually do to see what his opinion was on what he watched. But it's like nobody's really hinting on the fact that they try to rob Frank Martin. And I'm not for sure if it was Showtime trying to rob him, promoters trying to rob him, a manager trying. I don't know what it was, man. But and they had all intentions of trying to rob him of this fight. But he was not about to let that happen. He knew he was controlling it. And even Derek James is, telling him that he was down on the scorecards in the corner, what he had seen from, I guess, the Showtime scorecard, and that he had to pick it up. He had to knock this guy out. They even had his corner thinking that he had to go out there and knock this guy out. And he didn't, man. He absolutely controlled that fight. I even went back and I watched that fight a second time just to see maybe I'm not seeing something. Maybe I was too biased. Maybe I'm too much of a Frank Martin fan. And I don't want to be a homer or a fanboy. You know what I mean? So I went back, I watched it 2 times, and nothing. And even in the second time of watching it, no way in hell did I ever think that Frank Martin was losing that fight. Did I ever think, Martin's not going to pull this one out, man. He's behind in the scorecards. Yeah, he started out the first 5 rounds slow, but he still outpunched and was more active than his opponent. Regardless of what they want to say, making it out like his opponent was doing more. He was throwing a big looping right, and literally it was all the guy had the whole time. He didn't really have anything else to bring to the table against Martin. He was a good, hard, looping right-hand puncher. Frank knew that. He knew how to avoid it. So he did that the entire fight, and as I watched it the second time, I was still just baffled on the fact they had him down 7-2, guys. 7-2 going into the 10th round. You're going to sit here and tell me, anybody who watched that fight, that Frank Martin was down 7-2 going into the 10th round? There's no way in hell, man. So I was just appalled by that. I'm more appalled that no one's called Showtime out for it. I'm going to call Showtime out for it. You guys are some clowns for that shit, man. Absolute clowns. The announcers on Showtime, you guys are clowns for trying to justify that shit-ass scorecard that your guy gave you. You know what I mean? When I watch The Zone, if Chris Mannix puts up a shitty-ass scorecard, them fucking announcers rip his ass up, man. They rip him up. They let him have it. What the fuck are you watching? Twitter, all the social media pages will tear his ass up if he comes up with a bad scorecard or an off the wall scorecard or just some crazy shit. Didn't seem to happen in the Showtime fight. I seem to be the only one calling this shit out. Literally the only one on my Bourbon and Boxing page on Facebook. Same thing. I called it out immediately. I said they tried to rob Frank Martin tonight. They absolutely had all intentions to rob Frank Martin. I did another little post on my Bourbon and Boxing talking about it the next day when they were trying to pump up his opponent, saying, oh, he wants a rematch versus Frank, and he wants Devin Haney, and he wants Tank Davis. Like, who's got invested interest in this guy? Frank put a whooping on him. Tank would knock him straight the fuck out. That's a fact. And Devin Haney would box this guy's ears off. He would box his fucking ears off. So no, this guy's not a top fucking contender in the lightweight. They wanted to make it like, hey, this guy, oh man, it's another guy to add to that lightweight division. No, he's not there. He is not there, dude. I'm telling you guys, somebody has invested interest in that guy, and they want him to be bigger than what he is or what he's going to be. But I can tell you now, he's not that guy, man. And Frank put a good fight plan together, and he absolutely went out there, and I feel like he dominated the whole fight. He sure the hell was not down 7-2 going into the 10th round. If anything, he was up 7-2. And you could have gave him up 9-0 going into the 10th round, giving him all 9 rounds, because there wasn't a single round where you were ever like, oh my God, he's putting it on Martin, man. You got to watch out. Here he comes. Oh man, Martin's hurt. Martin's hurt. Not one time, bro. Not one time did Martin ever look uncomfortable. Did he look out of place? Did he look like he was in trouble? Any of that. So, I mean, I think that fight kind of pissed me off, and I really wanted to hit on it all week, kind of burning on me, and to see the other outlets not really hit on that and kind of run with the other storyline that, oh man, his opponent was good and he almost beat Frank. No, he didn't. No, he didn't, guys. Go watch that fight again. Frank was never in any situation where he was going to lose that fight. I promise you. Then you had another fight. Also, let's move on to the other fights. I don't want to keep talking about that one. Like I said, dude, it had me pumped up, man. It had me really, really, like pissed off, really, as I can say best. I might have had a couple shots of bourbon in me while watching it, and I was hyped, man. I was like, "Are you guys kidding me right now? What are you watching?" So as I go to see what the results were last week, like I said, I was watching back and forth both cards, the Zone card and the Showtime card, because they both seem to start later. I tried to catch that Kelly fight. I never got around to catching it. I even tried to go watch it again later in the week. My kids were running around, so I didn't really get an opportunity to pay much attention to it. I tried to watch some of the undercard on that, but of course we watched Alicia Baumgardner. She got the win over her opponent, Christina Lenormando. Man, these fucking names, man, I'm telling you, where do they come from? But anyways, that was a pretty good fight. Alicia showed a lot of power. Her opponent showed a lot of heart. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like she showed a lot in her. Damn, I lost track here, guys. That's why I hate clicking off my thing, because then I lose track of what I'm doing instead of focusing on the show. And here I am lost talking about Baumgardner. They say Delphine Person, she's trying to enforce a mandatory status. She wants to fight Baumgardner next. And Baumgardner, she put on a good showing. She's got a lot of power. Her opponent showed a lot of heart. And she didn't, she put it all on the line in front of her hometown fans. She put on a good fight. The Frank Martin fight, if I'm correct, started not long after that, so I kind of lost track of the Baumgardner fight as I started watching more of the Frank Martin fight. But Alicia, like I said, she is definitely one of the best in the women's division. No doubt about it. Her power and strength, her combinations, her footwork, her speed, and she seems to get better every single time she steps in the ring, and she seems to showcase a little bit more when she steps in there. I think in this fight, she really, really, really wanted to knock her opponent out because it was the only loss she ever had in her career. So I think she wanted to send a message that was then, this is now. She's not that same person. She's going to kick ass and take names, and she's only getting better. So if you had a chance to beat her, it might have been 3 years ago. Now it's going to only get harder and harder. And she put on a good show for her hometown. I'm trying to remember. I know there were some undercard fights on there that I watched, but I also, like I said, man, it's now going into late Friday night. And I didn't pull up any of my results, do much of my homework this week. I just kind of jumped on here to do the show. So I'm kind of winging it as you say. We're just kind of going to wing it today. My notes aren't that stacked. They're not that good to help me. Matter of fact, I'll just take those notes out of there. They're not going to do me any good at all. But, I know the fight's coming up this week. And then, the fight results for last week. Josh Kelly got a win over his opponent. Let's go down here. Yeah, Josh Kelly defeated Gabriel Corzo. That fight seemed to be a good fight. I heard a lot about it. I really want to watch it. Kelly started to call fights for Chris Eubank or Conor Benn. I don't think Conor Benn's going to be in the ring anytime soon, even if he is trying to apologize at this point and backtrack on everything he previously said. Kelly got the wide decision win over Carrozza, but he's calling out Eubank and Conor Benn. Eubank's got to beat Smith, who just beat him. So he's got to go out there in that rematch and beat Smith before he can think of another opponent at this moment. Eubank's kind of big for Josh Kelly, I think. So I'd watch maybe calling Eubank out. But Conor Benn, man, as much as I like the guy, he has kind of dug himself in a hole. And, not just, I feel like the British Boxing Board gave him an opportunity and an out to kind of justify. They even said, look, maybe it was from the eggs and stuff that he'd been drinking, and that's what caused him to fail his drug test. They even kind of gave him a way out, and he didn't like that. He didn't accept that. So he went on a big rant, just bad-mouthing the British Boxing Board. Then they stripped him of his license, and he said, I don't need to fight in Britain. And I think he's finding out, yeah, he does need to fight in Britain. He doesn't have that name in the States yet to be able to fight here. So maybe the only other place would be Australia, somewhere around there, and I'm pretty sure the British Boxing Board might control Australia also. I know they control a lot in that area, but he's got to get his shit right. He's trying to backtrack now. He wrote a letter to the British Boxing Board pretty much trying to apologize after going on show after show after show, bad-mouthing them, saying they were out to get him. This was bullshit. He never failed a drug test. To me, man, if it happens and you failed that drug test and it was more than one that he supposedly failed, then you got to man up and just pretty much say that, hey, I was going up to fight a bigger guy, and I felt I needed an edge. And I feel like that's what it was when he was going up to fight Eubank. Eubank was a lot bigger than Conor Benn. So Conor was probably trying to get that edge to try to even it out because he was good enough to box against Eubank, but the size difference was definitely going to be the difference in the fight, and I think Conor knew that, so he put himself in a bad position. So I think Josh Kelly might want to call a few other guys out that, I'd wait to see. If Eubank loses again to Smith, maybe you fight Smith. I don't know if you want that because I've been watching Smith the last few years, and after that, if I'm correct, Callum Smith was the one that fought Canelo, and Canelo just beat his arms up, and he made him look average, and that was the first time I think I ever got to watch Smith fight, and then now the last few times I've watched about 3 more fights since then with him in there, and he's a good fighter, man. He's got his brother who's also a good fighter, and I might be mixing them both up. There's Callum Smith, and I can't think of his brother, but 2 brothers. They're both good fighters, and I think Eubank went in there trying with a different style against Smith that I think got him beat. I think they said Roy Jones had been training him, and he went out there trying to do that loopy style that Roy Jones has. And it just didn't work for him. It's not who he is as a boxer. He should have just stayed with what he had. He's got the power, the size to fight with Smith. And I felt like he got out of his element, and that's what opened him up for that knockout against Smith. But let's move on to next week's fights. I told you guys what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Kambosos Maxi Hughes fight. Max Hughes, God damn it, man. Max Hughes fight. Then I'm going to talk about Inoue and Fulton, and then we're going to talk about the women's fight on the card this week on Friday, uh, which is Esperanza, if I'm correct. Yep, yeah, that's who it is. Sinisa Estrada versus Leonela Udicia. So those two guys fighting each other this week, are those two ladies, guys. Two ladies this week are going to be the Friday fight, but I want to take that fight on. I'm going to take that fight Saturday because we only got that one fight Saturday. Kambosa versus Hughes. And to be honest, this is a huge fight for Kambosa. He can't afford to lose 3 straight fights and still be considered a contender. So he's got to go out there, put a show on, remind people why he was once a former champion, unified champion. Even though I'm still not big on Kambosa, I felt like it was a Buster Douglas moment for him where he had his 15 minutes of fame. And then after that, he got exposed by a real incredible boxer in Devin Haney. And I think Devin would have done that to a lot of guys, regardless if it was Kambosa or not. And that doesn't mean that Kambosa's not a good fighter. Devin's just on a whole nother level, and I don't think people realize that. They wanted him to lose against Lomachenko, and they made every excuse they could. I thought that fight was 50-50, and I thought Devin got it in the end. I think the body shots for him is what really won that fight for Devin. Being smarter and outmanning his opponent, and that's hard to do with Loma. Loma's an amazing fighter, super smart, but I told you guys going into that fight how smart Devin was, and that was going to be a 50-50 fight because it was two very athletic fighters. It was two guys who had incredible footwork, two guys who have incredible hands, and they both have an incredible boxing IQ. And Devin was just smarter that night, man. You can get shitty about it, you can be mad about it all you want, but the fact is Devin Haney outboxed him that night. And it wasn't by a lot, and it's not like Lomachenko got his ass kicked, but the body shots from Devin, I think, is what really gave him that fight, man. And I think you saw that with Kambosa. He fought him twice in Australia, and both of those fights, Kambosa never stood a chance, man. He did his all. He trained his ass off. It's not like he didn't go out to win those fights. He absolutely did, but he was just outmanned with a guy like Devin Haney. I don't know much about Kambosa's opponent this week, Max Hughes. I don't know much about him at all. So I expect Kambosa has to have a good win. He has to have an outstanding win. I think he needs a knockout. He needs something that's going to remind people who he is. George Kambosa. Put him back on the scene. Get him back in that lightweight title talks. Get him back into fighting the big names. He's with Top Rank at the moment. I don't know how many fights he's got with Top Rank, but he's with Top Rank at the moment now. I guess he just signed with him because I know he recently wasn't with him. Or did he? He might have signed with him because I know when he fought Lopez, he wasn't a Top Rank guy. Lopez was. And matter of fact, they fought on the zone in that fight. So he wasn't with Top Rank. I want to say maybe after he fought Devin Haney, he might have signed with Top Rank. But I think he's got to have a big showing, man. He's got to remind people who he is and why he should be in that talks for contender. I still don't think he's in that talks in the lightweight. I just think you got too many guys a lot better than him. Shakur, Tank, Ramirez. I mean, there's so many guys in that lightweight division. I know I'm missing a bunch of guys that you guys. I mean, Loma would put it on him. Devin Haney, of course, showed that he would put it on him. I think there's just too much for him in that lightweight division for him to really ever recapture those belts or be a contender, in my opinion. I think he's going to be a guy that, is going to put on some good fights for you, but he's not going to be able to beat those top guys that are just going to outbox him all day. But let's move over to the Tuesday fight, which is going to be awesome some way. I mean, I get it's going to be awesome. What's weird this week is all three of these fights are on ESPN Plus. The Kambosa fight is going to be on ESPN Plus. The Inoue Fulton fight is going to be on ESPN Plus. You can catch that. And then the female fight is going to also be on ESPN Plus. And that's actually pretty weird to see all of the three fights that I'm talking about this week going to be on the same network. But the Inoue Fulton fight, man, this fight is absolutely huge, and I think Fulton's definitely not getting enough credit for taking this fight against Inoue. Inoue is an absolutely dangerous guy, and Fulton probably the only guy out there right now that would have taken this fight against Inoue. I think Inoue kind of showed in his last fight that he's human, and Fulton's going to bring it to him, but I think when it's all said and done, Inoue just has too much in his arsenal. He's too much of a well-rounded fighter to lose this fight to Fulton. I think Fulton's going to give him a great fight. It's going to be a hell of a fight, man. Definitely a fight to tune into. I get off work at 5 a.m. at my night shift job, and I don't go into my other job till 7 a.m. So I have that 2-hour window to hopefully, I'm usually sleeping in that hour and a half window that I get before I have to go to my other job. But I'm going to stay awake. I'm going to deal with being tired because that's how much I want to see this fight. It's in Japan. Let me look and see what time it is going to be, because being in Japan, I'm just assuming that it's going to be at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be a 2 a.m. start time or something like that. That's just what I'm assuming most fights over there are. I don't know if they figured out a way to make this fight where it's not going to be like that, where it's not going to be at 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't see any start time on here. It's not really indicating. It says check your local listing. It's going to be on ESPN and Sky Sports. It's going to be at Araki Arena, Tokyo, Japan. Man, I wish they had a good start time on that. I wish I could find that out for you guys. But yeah, I wish they had a start time. That sucks. I wish I could really see what time this fight was going to start. Maybe I'll look it up on here. See what time that fight's going to start for you guys so we can kind of get an idea. Like I said, I think it's going to be one of those weird start times because it's in Japan, so I don't see it being on our time over here. It's obviously not going to be. Looking at the fight time on that for you guys to kind of get an idea of what time that fight is going to start. It says 9 a.m. Eastern. Fuck, man. And that means I'm going to miss that goddamn fight. So, yeah, that sucks. It looks like I'm not going to be able to stay awake and watch that. I'm glad I seen that so that I didn't stay awake to start watching that fight. But, like I said, that fight's going to be amazing. So, I mean, on Tuesday morning, a rare Tuesday morning, man, that just sucks that they put that fight on a Tuesday morning. Who the fuck fights on a Tuesday morning? Who is watching that? I know in Japan it's not Tuesday morning, but who the fuck in Japan is watching big fights on a Tuesday? I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Like, who is watching that fight on a Tuesday? Just awful, man, now that I sat here and think about it. That they would have put that fight on a Tuesday. I know they didn't want to compete against the Terrence Crawford Spence fight on a Saturday, but being in Japan, that fight would have been at 9 a.m. on a Saturday, obviously, right? That wouldn't have interfered with the Spence Crawford fight at all, and you would have had a nice day of boxing. You could have got up nice and early on a Saturday morning and caught that fight in Japan around 9 a.m., and it would have probably been over around noon, and could have got you a nice little snooze nap in, and then went on for the Terrence Crawford fight later on that night, Crawford versus Spence. But for some reason, the promoters of this fight decided that Tuesday would be a great fucking day to have a fight. 9 a.m. in the morning in America, Tuesday. Not going to get to watch that fight. I'm going to try to catch it, of course. It's on ESPN Plus. I do have ESPN Plus. I'll get to watch I'll get to rewatch the fight when I get home, which might actually be better for me. Don't want to go into work too tired. So that'll give me time to sleep, and I won't have to set up waiting for that fight. But yeah, I'll be able to rewatch it when I get home. So I guess it's not too bad. It's just weird, man, that they would have taken this big fight like this in a way, Fulton, and just absolutely, what would you call that? Alienate the boxing fans on this fight. I don't know. Too many boxing fans is going to get up at 9 a.m. to watch that on a Tuesday, or too many people that aren't going to be at work at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. So that kind of sucks for us as boxing fans. Like I said, most of us will be able to rewatch it on ESPN Plus. If you have ESPN Plus, you will be able to go back and rewatch that fight. It just sucks not fighting. Now I've got to avoid getting on the internet. I got to avoid any boxing news blowing up my phone or my tablet, anything like that. I got to ignore all that and try to ignore it all day and not see the results of the fight and then go watch it later on. And still try to get on there and watch it without somebody telling me what happened. But also on Friday, like I said, they threw a nice little women's fight in there on Friday, and it's going to be a banger, man. I really like Senicia Estrada a lot. She's a really impressive fighter, and I think I don't know much about her opponent. Like I said, I know female boxing, but I don't. Some of these females I haven't heard of. Eudikia, I've never heard of her. So well, I mean, and then I'm looking on here, it looks like Esperanza is calling out Estrada on a rematch, saying, I want her scrawny ass now. This fight's going to happen in Las Vegas. It is going to, obviously, it's on ESPN Plus, like I said. It is going to be a later fight in Vegas, of course, probably a 10 o'clock start time. Pretty sure, it's pretty awesome. It's going to be the main card. It's a 10-round junior lightweight, or it's a minimum weight title, but there's going to be a 10-round lightweight co-feature. Unbeaten Las Vegas native Andre Savage Cortez will take on Sacramento-born contender Javier Martinez. So that looks like they got a nice little undercard on there. It will stream exclusively in the U.S. on ESPN Plus. So if you're outside of the U.S., you may not have access to that fight with the location thing. Man, that seems to happen to me sometimes when I'm trying to watch a fight that is in another country. Hankers me a little bit, takes me down, makes it where I can't watch it and pisses me off. But there's ways around it. There's streaming networks you can find, stuff like that. So if you don't have ESPN Plus, of course, there's all other ways around getting to watch it. I'm not saying and are condoning doing it, but there are ways around it. ESPN Plus isn't bad, though. I think it's $6.99 a month. Definitely worth it, in my opinion, to get ESPN Plus for the price. I just resubscribed to DAZN also, which is now $24.99 a month in the U.S. I'm not happy with the price, but I like the Ak and Barak boxing show on there a lot. DAZN boxing show, just not with Ak and Barak, but the Tony and the one guy, I can't think of his name. But I like that show a lot. I like to get to listen to it. If you're a big boxing fan, DAZN I think is something something. If you're a boxing fan, it's definitely a network that you should probably have. I like it because I get a lot of the UK fights, a lot of the other fights around the world that I don't get here in the US. So that's why I don't mind. I just pay for it, and it sucks, but I do it. $24.99 is not. I had to cancel my HBO Max for it, but that sucks. But hey, you got to do what you got to do sometimes when you want what you want. Let's go ahead, man. Let's get another shot in us, man. I think this show. I think we're about done. I don't have much more to talk about. Of course, boxing news. I didn't get to that. Same stuff, same day. Charlo, the Charlo brother, Jermell, if I'm correct, the guy who hasn't fought in 2 years will not be stripped of his titles, according to I think the WBA, WBO, whatever has said they will not strip him of his titles, even though he is still not scheduled to fight anybody. He turned down the Canelo fight. There's no real reason and why he's not fighting, just personal reasons. 2 years of personal reasons, man. I mean, at what point do you got to solve that and nip that in the ass, man, and get back in the ring? You can't just hold the belts. That's one thing I would say about Canelo. He's a guy who's been in the gym since he was 13, maybe younger, and he's in there every day. He's putting in the work. There's not a day goes by that I don't think that guy's in a boxing gym. And then he'll fight anybody. He'll take on any fight, whoever you are. He fights 3 to 4 times a year. And then you got these guys with belts who fight once a year and then sit on their couch for the rest of the year. Sometimes they don't even fight once a year. Sometimes they fight once every other freaking year. And I think in a sport like boxing, come on, man, that's disgraceful. Disgraceful. Get off your ass, get out there and fight, and stop making excuses why you're not getting in the ring. You can continue to say personal reasons. Well, then give the belts up and let somebody else have a shot at them. And for the WBO and them not to take action to say, hey, get in the ring or lose your shit. That's a fact. Take it from him. They're not doing that. And I really don't get that. Why they're not trying to strip him of his titles. I don't get it. If you're not fighting, you're not being active. You're either retired or you're injured in a way that you can't fight. And as far as I know, he is not injured in a way he cannot fight. So, that's something I think needs to be handled a little bit better in boxing. Once again, boxing reform, people. If we had a boxing reform, we had a committee of people who could sit down and they overlook this type of stuff, and then they can make a proper decision instead of the belts making that decision. The belt holders, the WBO, WBA, all these guys making those decisions personally and allowing guys to just sit on these belts. I mean, that goes for Spence and Crawford also. These guys fight once a year. When they're highly talented and they should be in there 2-3 times a year, I think every fighter should fight at least 3 times a year. And, and there shouldn't really be any question about it, man. Get out there, fight, put your name out there, fight everybody that comes along, defend your belts, and, things like that. That's why I have a big problem with the Fury and Ngannou fight. I mean, the fact is, man, Fury is an active fighter. And if you're an active fighter, you shouldn't be out there fighting exhibition fights. I feel like exhibition fights are for retired fighters, former retired boxers like Mayweather. Mayweather doesn't consider himself an active fighter. All right, he's retired. He's made it clear, I am retired. I no longer am an active fighter. So that's why he does exhibition fights, and he has every right to do that, being a retired fighter. He's not holding on the belts and then claiming this guy and that guy won't sign a contract. There's 2 sides to every story, man. You can't tell me that all these guys you approached to fight, nobody wanted to sign a contract or everybody wanted too much money. You know what I mean? I mean, if Andy Cruz is telling you he wants $20 million, yeah, that might be fucking ridiculous. I don't see that. I'm pretty sure Andy Cruz isn't going to price himself out of a Fury fight. I don't believe he said he wanted $20 million. I don't buy that. I think he's the type of guy you could throw him $3 or $4 million and he'd take that fight against Fury because, I mean, like I said, I just think there's too many excuses. Usyk moved on. He didn't go do an exhibition fight. Usyk decided to go fight, Dubai in September, I think, or August or September. He's going to fight him. He didn't go fucking find some UFC fighter and decide, hey, I'm going to take this exhibition fight against Conor fucking McGregor. Some bullshit like that. He's staying active. He's an active fighter. So he's fighting active fucking fighters. So, I mean, that's the thing with boxing that they're like, oh, we're not going to do anything about it. Fury, he tried to get guys to fight him. There's tons of fucking guys in that heavyweight division. If you can't get the top 3, 4, 5, 6 guys want to fight you, then go to 7, 8, 9, 10 and fucking beat up those guys. You know what I mean? Give somebody else an opportunity. Since these guys don't want to sign a contract with you, find the next guy in line that does want to sign a contract with you. That's active. And he's an active fucking fighter right now. That's why I don't like this sideshow bullshit, clown shit that's going on in boxing. That's why you won't hear me talk about Jake Paul and his fights on here. I don't believe in that fucking bullshit, that KSI shit. That is not fucking boxing, man. You got these guys who have dedicated their whole lives to getting up every morning since they were a fucking kid and putting the work in and doing what they needed to do to become professional boxers. And then you got these YouTubers, and DAZN is real. DAZN is real fucking good for putting a platform for these clowns. They love putting them on there. They see money. Like, oh, it's money. We're gonna make money from it. They got all kinds of backstreet brawling going on DAZN that I noticed since I just resubscribed to them. But I don't support that, man. I really don't. I don't think I think it's insulting to boxers for somebody to just jump in and say, I'm a boxer because I put on some fucking gloves and got in the ring. And then the people that support this shit, it's just, it's just the weirdest shit I've seen. I don't really agree with it much. I think it's weird. I'm not a fan of it. I don't watch any Jake Paul fights. Even with Nate Diaz, I like Nate Diaz. I still don't watch those fights. Still not going to watch that fight. You won't hear me talk about that fight on the show. You won't hear me talk about KSI and all that bullshit on here. That's not boxing to me. That is sideshow. That's a sideshow carnival is what it is. Guys who want to be boxers. It's no different than backyard boxing that you might watch on YouTube and shit like that. It's not that entertaining for me. But like I said, man, not a lot of news this week. I talked about what I wanted to talk about. Talked about a couple fights that's going to be going on next week. We merged those together because, as you know, next weekend is a huge, huge weekend with the Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence fight. And there's a big UFC fight going on that night, too. So you're going to have some clashes. What are people going to choose? I know I'm choosing boxing every day, all day. I got a lot of people who like UFC, want me to talk UFC, but I'm going to be honest with you. I do not pay any attention to UFC. I couldn't tell you a single fighter outside of maybe John Jones, Dustin Poirier, these guys. But outside of those guys, I couldn't tell you anything else about UFC. But I do have a cousin who knows a lot about UFC. So, if that's something you guys wouldn't mind seeing on here, a little bit of UFC talking, I might bring him in to explain a little bit more of that side. I am not a mixed martial arts combat guy. Not that I'm against it. I like it. I love some hand-to-hand combat. I love mixed martial arts. That shit's badass, man. I give those guys all the credit in the world, man. They're warriors. I've just never been able to really get into it like I do with boxing. But like I said, man, let's take a shot in this show up, man. It's a nice little show. It's a nice little Friday show. Got it in quickly. Not a big show this week, but we're going to call this show Moving On Up with some new equipment. And, we got some new fans. Everybody cheering for us. Lil John's been on the show. Yeah. What? But anyways, man, thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Bourbon and Boxing, man. And I appreciate you guys and everything you guys do for me, man. Thanks for supporting the show. And once again, I'm your host, Jeff, and you guys have a great night, man.